Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye is at the Brown County Library, interviewing candidates in 2014 elections. We're interviewing Joe Majeski of Sturgeon Bay. He's a Democrat running in Assembly District 1. Joe, welcome to Wisconsin Eye.
Well, Steve, it's a delight to be here, and thank you very much for this opportunity to get our message out to the people of the First Assembly.
Thank you. Just this program appreciates of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. First run for office?
Correct. My first run for office.
Give us a short version of the bio.
However, I've been in the public eye for a long time.
You have?
Yes, I have.
Educator.
I've had a couple of different careers, Steve. My short bio is I was actually born and raised in the First Assembly in Casco down in Kewaunee County. Kind of a Norman Rockwell existence, a wonderful town to be raised in. Graduate of Ripon College, went on to get a master's degree at University of La Crosse, and originally trained as an educational school psychologist. Worked in that field for about 6 years, worked in all the Door County schools as a school psychologist. Got itchy feet, decided to change careers, and went back to school, got a master's in business administration, business management, and then went into managing my uncle's medical clinic down in Luxembourg in Kewaunee County. He was a long-term family physician there. He wanted to grow his clinic and add doctors, and said, you know, Joe, you're the perfect person to come down and make this happen. And I said, well, you're kidding me. And he had a lot of faith and trust in me, and we actually did grow the community, ultimately build a larger building and added services and physicians, and it's a wonderful medical institution for the people of central Kewaunee right now. And then I changed careers again. I missed the schools and I missed the kids. Went back and got a degree in educational administration, and then was hired at Sevastopol schools up in Door County, and just retired as their 24-year principal and director of special ed. So I've been retired for about a year now, but we actually have a small business too. My wife and I started Door Peninsula Hops. We actually grow hops for local brewers. We have about a 20-acre farm that we do that on. So now I'm off on a new adventure.
Yes, you are. I went to your website, so let's talk about you. Your website says you're fighting for local control. Public schools are threatened. So let's talk about, if you're in the Assembly, what are you going to fight for in the next state budget for public schools?
Well, you know, public schools are near and dear to my heart. And they're under assault right now in our current legislative agenda. What I need to fight for, number one, is adequate funding. What I need to fight for is local control of what happens in our schools. I have sat on thousands of school board meetings over my 24 years as an administrator. Went to nearly every school board meeting, and every year I see the power of the local school boards being diminished from mandates. And it doesn't matter who's sitting in the offices down in Madison. Seems to be coming with less and less control and more mandates. And I think the local school boards, the local administrators, the local teachers, the local parents and community members are in the best decisions to make that decision in terms of what happens to their school. So I will fight for adequate funding. I will fight for local control for our school districts.
What do you think should be the future of the choice and voucher programs?
Well, this is something that I have a clear position on. I am not a fan of our current voucher school system. We are giving tax dollars, local tax dollars, from the First Assembly to schools that are privately run, have no accountability in terms of test scores, teacher certification, programs that they run, and they cherry pick their students. I just feel that is not the Wisconsin way. That's not a progressive state. That's not what Wisconsin was founded on. We were founded on a strong public school system. When we start to give those dollars, those tax dollars, away to private companies, I think we're heading down the wrong road.
Would you keep it in these two large cities in southeast Wisconsin, Racine and the city of Milwaukee, and then shut it down statewide?
I'd definitely shut it down statewide. I would consider keeping it into those school systems. I think we need to study the effects, the long-term effects of the voucher system. There are other states that have gone down this road before with not positive effects. So I would not be opposed to keeping it in those areas, but I am dead set against it, on expanding it statewide.
And your website says you do not agree with the governor's call to throw out the Common Core standards.
No, this is, again, something clearly in my wheelhouse. I have not been in the position of making policy, but I've been in the position of implementing it with parents and students and teachers. And we have implemented standards for 20 years. This is not anything new to public schools at all. And it's something that we realize we have to do. What is taught in one third grade class in one school has to be the same as what's taught in another third grade class in another school, because we have a mobile society. At our small school at Sevastopol, we turned over 15% of our students every year. 15% were new every year, are left to a different school. They have to have a seamless transition from one school to another. So we actually we developed Wisconsin state standards about 10 years ago. Unfortunately, they were not easily measurable, and they were not really of the highest standards, highest quality that we expected. So actually the governors of the Midwestern states, the state superintendents of education got together and say, we need to take at developing high quality standards so we can have world-class schools in math and in reading. And we need to make sure that they're measurable. And they did just that. And for the last 3 years, we've been implementing them in our schools very successfully. For us to take a step back for what I consider primarily political reasons would be a real disservice to all of our children, our parents, and the tax dollars that we've put into this initiative. And it's a good initiative. It will improve our test scores in our public schools.
Your website says that your environmental concerns is also a key priority for you. You found out, to your surprise, 30% of the wells in Kewaunee County are contaminated, or not? That's
correct, Steve. It is the citizens where I grew up are in a very difficult situation in Kewaunee County now. Streams that I fished for trout in, that I water skied in, the Kewaunee River, the Casco Creek, are now, you can't even dip your hand in them at all. They're so brown right now and they're so polluted. And that has filtered down into our groundwater. That was one of the reasons, Steve, I decided to jump into this. I attended hearings right in the courthouse right here down in Green Bay, in which the folks in the town of Lincoln who have 50% of their wells unusable were suing the DNR because they were allowing yet another large farm expansion, thousands of cars, a CAFO. I sat at that hearing, and the judge asked the folks at the witness stand, the DNR said, are you responsible for groundwater? And they said, not us. Health Department from the state, are you responsible for groundwater? Not us. And then I realized something was fundamentally broke there, and I had to get involved. That was one of the reasons I decided to run for the First Assembly, to protect for the people in the county. I have asked through repeated letters to the editor and repeated speeches for state help from the DNR, from the health department, from the university system to investigate the issue, the crisis that's happening in Kewaunee County. And what I keep hearing again is the same thing, not our responsibility.
Would you have voted for the mining bill? It was one of the first things passed last session.
Well, not that I'm against mining in Wisconsin. What I am against, though, is not a thoughtful process to go through to see the long-term effects of what this mining is going to happen. And what I'm against is corporations, mining companies writing their own bills and then quickly getting them passed by the state legislature without a real clear screening process. As a young college student, I worked at the paper mills here in Green Bay, and I saw what happened with the pollution into the Fox River. And even now, we are still spending millions of tax dollars trying to clean up that mess in the Bay of Green Bay. I do not want us to get into the same mess again. We have to think this through very carefully. We have to make sure that our environment's protected for multiple generations to come and that we're not burdening them with another huge cleanup mess.
You managed a medical clinic. 1 in 5 Wisconsin residents rely on Medicaid for health care. The American Hospital Association says our Medicaid reimbursement rate is second lowest
Correct.
in the nation. What's your position on whether those rates should be increased?
Well, again, managing a medical clinic for almost 10 years, I have been on the forefront, and I have seen both the policy decisions and how those policies are implemented. And we have a significant fundamental problem. And it goes deeper just than the Medicaid reimbursement rates. Because what happens is, with the Medicaid reimbursement rates so low, those hospitals and physicians are cost shifting that cost to the local insurance, to our local small businesses, our local citizens, through increased insurance rates, increased deductibles. So we are still paying for those low Medicaid insurance rates, but it's significantly hampering our economy, particularly our small businesses right now, and that has to change. I think we have to take a look at those rates. We've got to make sure they're at a comparable level with other states. I think we made a fundamentally wrong decision in not accepting the Medicare expansion money, or Medicaid expansion money from the federal government, because I think that also would have helped it too. But we have to get to the fundamental problem of why people are why Medicaid is expanding and why more and more people are on it. We're not paying a living wage. We have to take a look at that. We don't have high quality jobs. As in Michigan, we're behind in those areas. We've got to take a look at the fundamental problems rather just short-term fixes here.
Let's talk about transportation funding. Assembly District 1 needs good roads for people to come up. And,
yes.
Yet the Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance has said if we fund transportation at 2013 levels for 10 years, we're $2 billion short.
Yeah.
How should that potential deficit be made up, Joe?
Well, first of all, taking a look at our state roads. For one reason or another, I think our state roads are getting adequate funding right now. If you travel around Green Bay, you see the amazing construction projects on our state roads. What is significantly hurting as I travel and knock on thousands of doors and attend dozens and dozens of town board meetings, our local officials are saying we don't have adequate funding to repair our local roads anymore. And Kewaunee County and Door County are primarily local roads. I mean, that's how our infrastructure works. We have to take a look at their shortfall in funding and the dropping of state revenue for our local officials. That's one of the critical and most important things that I plan to work on when I get to State Assembly. But the question is how. There was a Blue Ribbon Commission that looked at a number of options last year. From my understanding, none of those options were given serious consideration. And I think we have to take a look at that right now. I think we have to go back and we have to review it. We have to take a look at the revenue funding of it. Our gas tax has been flat for 10 years, hasn't even kept with inflation. We have to be realistic, folks. If we're going to keep our infrastructure, which our economy needs, we're going to have to invest in it.
Okay. There was a bill introduced last session that will be reintroduced, legalize medical marijuana. This travels, of course, with the experience in Colorado and the state of Washington, legalize recreational.
Yep.
Your position on both issues?
Well, this is a discussion I've had with my daughter and my son-in-law numerous times. They live in Denver right now, so we followed this issue very carefully. 2 grandchildren out there. First of all, in legalizing medical marijuana, to me, that is a no-brainer. It is a pharmaceutical that can have a significant effect on alleviating pain for a variety of folks. I think that clearly should be legalized, but under the direction of a physician, and should be dispensed as appropriate to those people who need it. There's no doubt about in my mind, and it's happening across the nation right now. Legalizing recreational use of marijuana, I think we need to go slower on that. I think we have some models that we can watch. We have Washington and Colorado who have legalized it. I think we have to watch that very carefully. We have to take a look at the pros and cons and see how those things are, how the benefits or the consequences are working out in those states before we move down that track.
First offense drunken driving, we're the only state where it's not a crime. Should it be a crime, Joe?
This brings another value, Steve, for me, local control. I think that the local judge, who that perpetrator or that offender goes before, that local judge should have a wide variety of options available for them, because each circumstance is different for that first offense. And I think they should have options available, but I do not think it should be mandated that it should be automatically a crime for the first first offense. So we'll leave it up to that local judge and local control and decide what's best. Now, repeat offenders, no doubt about it. They need to be taken off the roads. We need to treat them very harshly and very severely because we have to protect the safety of our public.
And finally, I want to give you a chance to highlight differences between you and your opponent on November 4.
Oh, well, gosh, I've known Joel for 20 years, and Joel and I have had many political discussions over the years, too, so I think he knows my positions and I know his positions well. I think, first of all, I'm a fourth-generation citizen of the First Assembly. Grew up, my families, my grandparents, their grandparents grew up in the First Assembly. When you have that kind of deep roots, and you know the people at that level, you really have an obligation. You've developed a community, and you're part of that community, and you have an obligation to do what's best for them. And even if you're fortunate, you still have an obligation to give back. To those who have much, a lot is required of them, and you realize that in a small community. I've lived both in Brown County, in Kewaunee County, and in Door County. So I have that opportunity. In fact, I have run businesses in both Door and Kewaunee County. So I have that broad-based experience in a wide variety of public sector and private sector positions. I think that separates me out. But the most thing, Steve, is I have been in a position as a medical clinic manager for almost 10 years where I have had to work with individual families, and sometimes in the most difficult situations, and helping them find medical care, helping them find funding for it. When you're on the front lines and working with families, develop a real compassion for what their lives are like and to help them with it. The same thing as a principal for 24 years. I've had to develop policy, but I've had to implement policy, and I've had to make sure it works effectively. And getting to know families and educating sometimes the children of the children that I educated after 24 years, you really develop a caring attitude for them. You know what works and you know what doesn't work. So I think that separates me out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joe Majeski of Sturgeon Bay is a Democratic candidate in Assembly District 1. Joe, thanks for talking to Wisconsin.
Steve, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.